If you don't understand this one concept, you're going to keep chasing weak leads, handling fake objections, and just watching your potential commissions walk away. Every single prospect that you speak to is showing up with one of two energies, and it's a spectrum. But one side is the Chihuahua energy, and the other side is the Bulldog energy. One takes time, stalls, ghosts, needs time to think or analyze all the options, whereas the other one buys quickly and is decisive. And if you can't spot the difference in the first few minutes, you're screwed. In this video, I'm going to break down exactly how to diagnose each type of energy and flip it so that you can start closing with ease. If you're new to the channel, hello, nice to meet you. My name is Christian Jack. I generated over $100 million over the past 3 years in my sales career. And if you are looking for a place where you can learn how to do the same, if you want to make a lot of money in sales, if you want to just be a better influence on the people around you, increase your persuasion skills, then that's exactly what this channel is about. So if you would, please subscribe. And those of you who are already subscribers who are returning, thank you for coming back. Appreciate you always. And I've got another banger for you here today. So let's get into it. Now, my goal is that by the end of this video, you'll know, number one, exactly what Bulldog and Chihuahua energies actually look like in real sales calls. Number two, how to spot each one from language, tonality patterns, decision-making. And then last but not least, number three, the exact frameworks on how to shift Chihuahuas into Bulldogs so that they sell themselves on the call. This is psychological sales at the highest level. So if you're ready, let's get into it. Now, most people don't understand that, so I'm going to walk you through exactly what it feels like to be on a call with each type of prospect, all right? I want you to close your eyes for a second and imagine the last sales call that you took and replay it in your mind and see whether someone was truly Bulldog versus Chihuahua. Now, the characteristics of Bulldog, each one of these is just a temporary energetic state that somebody can be in, and it is very movable. Somebody might come onto the call as a Chihuahua and leave as a Bulldog. Somebody might come onto the call as a Bulldog and then leave as a Chihuahua. So I want you to replay and think back to the last call that you took and check off a couple of boxes. Number one is responsibility. What level of responsibility and ownership did this person take in their life? Did they take full responsibility? Did they take complete ownership? Did they really embody it and not just talk about it? If they did, that's a complete Bulldog energy prospect. If they did not, then that is complete Chihuahua energy prospect. Another box that you can check off is the level of urgency that somebody has. A high level of urgency in knowing that time is finite, looking at growth over the long term, and really just knowing that every single day we have the chance to change our lives dramatically through small changes. That person is Bulldog. And the opposite is Chihuahua, somebody who wants to take a long time to look things over. You know, there's always tomorrow. This really isn't going to make that big of an impact over the long term, blah, 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 blah. That's a total Chihuahua energy prospect. So those are two check boxes that you can find very, very quickly. A really fun one, if you're into language patterns and stuff, you can hear in somebody's first versus second or third person language patterns. If somebody is speaking in first person language about their problems, about their goals, about their experiences, about their life, about the present, then they are a total Bulldog. Versus if they're talking in second or third person, kind of externalizing and separating themselves from the language patterns themselves, then they are a total Chihuahua prospects. And that they want to separate themselves from the pains, the problems, the goals that they have for their life. They're like, you know, when you're making this kind of money, then it's a little bit harder to, buy the things that you want, etc. You can hear the difference between if they talk about themselves in first person or not. All right. Now, what's really interesting is when I was doing this the first time, somebody told me to completely just fuck off. And it was kind of a pain, but I think honestly, it was just something earlier that happened that day. I found a dildo in the drawer. It was like some weird stuff. But basically, if we define these terms for a second, right? I want to make sure that we understand what this is. This is not just a concrete state that somebody is in or just the way that people completely live their whole lives. Now, it can be, but it isn't necessarily that. So I need to make sure, like, we've all met somebody at the end of the day who's, I'm not going to say that they're a bad person, but they just believe that if somebody makes certain decisions in their life, that it directly means something else, or they just kind of assume that everything is going to be the same, as opposed to approaching life with just a little bit more nuance, right? What this is again, it's a temporary energetic state. And so what I would rather do personally is I want you and my students inside of the Sales Dojo to embody something different, to be someone different, somebody who can see that there's nuance in life, that everything isn't just dogmatic. It's not this or that, but it is truly a spectrum, right? One of the principles that I have in the dojo is that things are rarely ever truly just black or white. There's some sort of spectrum of gray in the middle, and it's just where along the spectrum that you fall. So somebody can be fairly close to completely bulldog energy, but not completely. And somebody can be, just over the line, over the halfway line towards Chihuahua energy, but they're fairly close to being bulldog energy. And so I want you to comment below what your own definition, just based off of what I've told you about this, of bulldog energy is, how you see it, how you see prospects show up, what bulldog energy looks like, and then also what Chihuahua energy looks like, because this is going to help not only you to just make this more concrete in your brain and make sure that you retain this really well and you can actually go and use it and make more sales with it, but also anybody else who's watching this video and is maybe struggling with seeing what bulldog energy really looks like on a call with prospects versus what Chihuahua energy really looks like on calls with prospects, right? Because I know that you want to truly make a meaningful change in your life from watching this video. Otherwise, you wouldn't be watching this video. Like, why waste your limited amount of time in your life? So the way that you make meaningful change is by taking what you learn and actually implementing it and starting to act in alignment with that version of yourself who consistently implements, who consistently grows, and who actually attracts those deals and more abundance into your life. Now, with me, I kind of view it as, people who are going and commenting right now, you guys are really the people who I see succeeding in life. You guys are the people who really just get it. You are truly on your way to becoming part of the top 1%. You stick out from the rest of the crowd. Ultimately, other people look up to you in your life. And ultimately, I think you just have a level of brains and intellect above most people. And it's not to say that if you're not doing that, you're dumb or by any means, but I just think that from every trend that I've seen from people inside the dojo and outside, people who actually take action on this quickly, they really go and succeed at a very high level. So if you want to succeed at a higher level, go ahead and leave those comments below and I'll go through them in a bit. So now I'm ready to go. What's my next step? Basically, this isn't about just some fun metaphor, right? It's a psychological lens that shows you what energy that your prospects is operating from and what they're really afraid of. So bulldog energy is decisive. They take ownership. They move quickly. They know what they want. And if your solution, if what you're selling aligns, then they buy, right? They say things like, I'm ready to go. What's the next step? I've made up my mind. Whereas Chihuahua energy is fairly insecure, right? They deflect responsibility. They overthink. They're looking for someone else to validate their decision. They use language like, I need to ask my spouse. What if it doesn't work for me? Can I think about it? Can I talk to, someone who is in the program who's successful, right? One is completely grounded. The other one is anxious. One makes decisions from power. The other one makes decisions from fear. But here's the thing. No one is permanently a bulldog or a Chihuahua. Again, these are temporary states, not personality traits. And your job as a salesperson is to shift the energy from Chihuahua closer to bulldog. And the further into bulldog you get, the easier that your closes are going to become. So I want to tell you a quick story because at the end of the day, this is just like when you're a kid. And this is really where bulldog versus Chihuahua energy is created, right? Whether you believe in nature or nurture, whether you believe, how much of your life is dictated by the way that you were conditioned as a kid, the way that you grew up, what you were rewarded with, how you were punished. There is a lot of this that comes from that time in your life. So I want you to just imagine, remember back to when you were a kid personally. What did you get rewarded for? What did you get punished for? And as you think about those things, you may start to notice some trends about where in your life right now you're maybe a bit more towards the Chihuahua energy for yourself and your own goals and your own dreams, your own desires, your own problems. And you may also notice other areas in your life where you're much more in the bulldog state, where you take ownership, you take responsibility. There's no fluff. You just do what needs done and there's no questions about it and you move quickly. And so you may start to notice some ties between when you were a kid to the way that you're living your life right now. And so I just want you to remember that as you get onto calls with prospects, because it's going to be the same for them. Now, you don't have to dive into a whole childhood trauma stuff, but let's get into how to actually spot this in just a couple of minutes now, right? So number one, easiest way to spot this is language patterns, right? If you listen for words that prospects use like maybe, hopefully, I'll try, right? Those are Chihuahua language patterns versus Bulldog language patterns will sound like I will, I want to, let's do it, I need this now, right? It's basically, do they speak in first person or third, right? If a prospect is saying, I know I've been stuck for the past 10 years versus, man, you know how like sometimes people just feel stuck for a few years? Like those are completely different energies. One is taking responsibility, one is not, all right? So number one is language patterns. Number two is then question types. If somebody is in Bulldog energy, they know exactly how to ask questions and they ask questions about how versus Chihuahuas ask about if, right? So 2 examples of the same question in Bulldog versus Chihuahua energy would be, how does this work for someone like me? Or Chihuahua energy might be, do you think this will work for me? Very different energy. Bulldog is like, I want to know how this is going to work and let's like get this done. Chihuahua is like, I don't know if this is even going to work for, like, do you think? And like, it's terrible, right? You can very clearly see the difference. So that's number 2 is the question types. Third and final way, I mean, there are probably more ways, but final way we're going to go through in this video. If you want to learn all the different ways, hit the link down in the description below. And I've got a full training on this inside of the dojo and yellow belt that you can go through on your own pace. So number 3 is tonality and pace. Bulldog prospects are calm, they're steady, they're very direct, they're urgent, they're ready to go, right? Bottom line driven, results driven. They just want to know that this is going to work and they want to know the details about how they can make it work. Versus Chihuahua prospects are going to be much higher pitched in their tonality. They're going to speak very quickly. They're going to feel a bit uncertain about things. So you're not just listening to what they say, you're decoding how they actually say it. So now that we understand how to point it out, how to recognize it, let's get into how to actually handle each type, right? So number 1, if your prospect is in Bulldog energy, the fewer words that you use and the less that you communicate, the better, right? You don't need to over-explain. You don't need to over-talk. You don't need to sell them after they've already sold themselves. Just simply align what you do with what they said they needed and what their situation is and be very direct, right? It sounds like you already know that this is the right move, but you're maybe just looking for how to take the next step. Is that right? Right? You just let them step into making the decision for themselves and you get out of their way. You don't get in the way of a bull who's rushing at you. You just let them go on in the direction that they were already going before, right? Now, if they're a Chihuahua, this is a little bit different, right? You don't push harder, but you reframe smarter, all right? So let's take the I need to think about an objection as an example. Right? Very quick reframe is first you want to clarify and you want to go through the whole process that I've taught before, but you want to let them pause and just like sit in the question of like, what specifically are you thinking through that we haven't already covered, right? Because thinking about it is just a way to stall. It's not a reason to actually not move forward. Or if somebody says that they need to speak to a current client, right? A simple reframe, again, like there's a lot of stuff that goes into this, so I'm not going to go through all that today, but like, do you want proof that this works or do you want permission to just go, right? Like how often do you wait in your life to see somebody else win before you let yourself win? There's very simple reframes, but basically it's just taking somebody's Chihuahua energy and their fear and their anxiety and it's shifting it towards like there's no reason to have that anxiety or that fear. And even if there was, like you're going to always have that in your life. The question is, what decision are you going to make in spite of that fear, in spite of that anxiety, right? People constantly worried about what if I fail, right? What's more important to you, avoiding failure or building the skill set that makes it irrelevant how often you fail because you know that you can win more often than you fail, right? If you knew failure was part of the path to getting to success, would that stop you or would that just be part of the plan? There's so many ways to do this. And like, I just went through a full masterclass on it this past week inside of the Sales Dojo. You get access to the recording of it when you join. So again, just join if you want to get through all of this. Now, last but not least, part 4 that I want to go through this is how to tactically shift somebody's energy using questions. All right. So here is the basic Chihuahua shifting to Bulldog protocol. All right. There's a couple of steps. Number 1 is inducing curiosity. You can do this in a lot of different ways, but you just want to get them to lean back into you for a second, because Chihuahua energy is about them leaning out and like just shrinking inside of themselves, right? So I want them to like not necessarily just immediately come all the way out from shrinking inside of themselves, but I want them to just like lean in a little bit, right? Then the second step is some sort of concern statement, right? So the curiosity trigger might be something like, hey, John, honestly, what you said right there is a pretty big red flag for me. And then just shut up and let them be like, well, what do you mean? Right? They lean in. They're curious about what was a red flag. So then the second step of a concern statement is saying something like, well, what you just said there that has me concerned is blank, right? And this is what leads into the third step. So it's kind of addressing whatever they said that was a red flag as a concern, and you're concerned for them, right? Because at the end of the day, it doesn't change the way that I put on my pants in the morning, whether you buy this or not, but this does have me concerned about you and your future based on what you told me earlier that you wanted. The third step now is some sort of identity question, right? A way that you can ask this is, well, what you just mentioned there that has me concerned, let's just say, is that you mentioned the word, like the phrase, if this will work for me. Let's use that, right? People say this all the time on calls, like, how do I know if this is actually going to work for me? So then some sort of identity question could be something along the lines of, well, if this will work for you, what do you feel is going to be different about you versus everybody else that's gone through the program that it's worked for? Right? Questioning their identity, like who they are they really any different from anybody else who's been in the program? Or like, let me ask you, when you're at your best, when you're succeeding in your life, because I know right now maybe you're just not in a place where you have that level of confidence that you used to. When you are succeeding at a high level in your life, like, do you live life and do you make decisions from this same, fear of what if this doesn't work out? Or do you lead your life from a position of, how do I make this work for me and for my future, right? That's a basic identity question. Now, step number 4 from here is getting into future projection, right? This is a classic cost of inaction, consequence question, however you want to do this. But basically, if nothing changes, where will you be in 6 months? And are you okay with that, right? And then last but not least, I don't know what step with this. So we got curiosity, we got concern, got identity, you got future projection. And then the last one here, step 5, is the decision frame. Right now, is this more about the fear of losing, or is this more about your desire to go and achieve X and Y and Z so that you can stop A and B and C and you can finally achieve D, E, and F for yourself, your future, and your family, right? Decision, it's basically just putting it into very clear terms. It doesn't always have to be binary, but that can help just get rid of all the other stuff going through their head at the time, is like, which one of these do you want? And so the point of this is not to force anybody into a funnel, but it's to help somebody just guide through their own thinking process. The way I always explain this to the dojo is that oftentimes the thoughts going through a prospect's brain are just like a big jumble of tangled spaghetti. And if you pull at anything too hard, then it's just going to break off and it's still a big old tangle. So what you have to do is find the ends and slowly untangle and guide to where they need to be. Just allow prospects to reauthor and rewrite their own identity in real time. And that takes time. It doesn't just happen immediately. Like seeing all these sales coaches online, these gurus, talking about how quickly they just overcome these objections. And like, it's good for marketing, I will say that. But like, it's not the way to do it if you really want to be successful at a high level in sales. So this is how you really make sales without ever really doing any of the selling. You're just guiding somebody on how to sell themselves. So if you're ready to build real sales skills, I do want to give one disclaimer to this. And I always say this, that knowledge is not power. People always say that knowledge is power, but they're completely wrong. Knowledge is only potential power until you implement it and you actually put it to use. And so that moment where you get to do that starts right now. So what I want you to do is go down below and comment how you're actually going to implement what you've learned today. This is going to do 2 things. Number 1, if you actually plan an action on how to implement this in the next 24 hours, studies show that you're 50% more likely to not only retain the information you learned, but also make the meaningful change in your life with it. And who doesn't want to make a meaningful change in their life? And number 2, it might just help somebody else who's watching this video who is having trouble thinking of how they can implement it in their own life. So even if you don't do it for yourself, at least do it for them. So some common mistakes that people make when going through this Bulldog versus Chihuahua training is, again, thinking that Bulldog or Chihuahua is a personality trait. It's not. It's a temporary energetic state. I guarantee that there are certain parts of the prospect's life that they are very bullish on, and then some parts of their life that they are very Chihuahua on. And so it's just about helping them figure out where they are in this specific thing in their life that they're on the call with you with, to like figure out the problem to solve and figure out how to achieve the solution or whatever. But the more that you can help them realize where they are and just help them shift to the other side, the better off you'll be. And understanding that it is very movable is very important, because if you don't think that you can move it, like what's the point of even identifying it in the first place, right? And maybe sometime later tonight, as your head hits the pillow and your mind begins to drift, you're probably going to try to remember what it was like before you knew how to handle Bulldogs versus Chihuahuas. And you'll be thinking about, I don't know if I can even remember how to second guess yourself, to hesitate, to wonder if you were ready to start leveling up your sales skills. But it may feel distant or fuzzy, almost like it happened to someone else. But what will feel crystal clear, almost glowing in your memory, like a bright light that's forever getting even brighter, is the moment today that something shifted. When the way that you saw yourself changed forever, you'll notice yourself becoming more of a Bulldog in your life and moving away from that Chihuahua energy that you have had for so long. And do you want to know the most amazing part? You won't need to force yourself to remember any of what we've covered today, because your mind on its own will keep bringing it back again and again and again, because even now it's becoming part of who you are. And as you begin your day tomorrow, you'll just know that you're never going back. So if you're ready to build real sales skills, change your degree of normalcy, and become a total Bulldog in your own life for yourself, and truly learn how to shift prospects from Chihuahua to Bulldog energy forever, hit the link down in the description below, start your 7-day free trial of the Sales Dojo, and let me know when you do, so I can congratulate you on becoming a Bulldog for yourself. I'll see you inside.